Pigeons! Love them or hate them, unless you've lived in Antarctica your whole life, you know them. For the vast majority of my life, I was pretty lacking in opinion on pigeons and birds in general. I definitely didn't subscribe to the idea that they were necessarily rats with wings, mainly because that actually sounds like a pretty awesome compliment to me, but I just generally didn't really care about them. Then, in my early 20s, I actually became fortunate enough to work with them. I worked with a mated pair at my local zoo named Rocky and Adrian. Affectionate, intelligent, curious, I saw so much of the human spirit reflected within these little birds. I started writing all of my papers in school about them, started making presentations about their anatomy, and just became enthralled with the idea of learning all that there is to know about pigeons. I am by no means an expert, but I am definitely an enthusiast. I want to understand and protect all species, so why not start with this sweet little bird? So go ahead and sit back, relax, and let's learn about the cool evolution of pigeons. So, where did it all begin? Dinosaurs. That's it. Kidding! Well, not entirely. Dinosaurs are the blueprint for all birds, including pigeons. But to say that birds and pigeons specifically came from dinosaurs would be a disservice and technically a lie. You see, pigeons are dinosaurs. More specifically, birds evolve from theropods, or dinosaurs that walked around on two legs rather than all fours. Most accurately, we're going to be looking at dinosaurs in the family of the dromaeosaurs and troodontids. In fact, let's start by taking a look at my close good friend, Archaeopteryx. Now, my fellow Animal Crossing heads may recognize that name as a distinctly bird-like fossil that can be found within the game's museum. Archaeopteryx is a genus of dinosaur that has gathered lots of differing opinions from paleontologists. Archaeopteryx is best described as being kind of the intermediate fossil between your classic dinosaurs and your modern birds. Their feathered wings, wishbone-like structure, and hollow bones make them very, very similar to what we think of as birds today. But its teeth, bony tail, and claws on the wings make it more like your classic dinosaur. Due to these discrepancies, it's been pretty difficult to nail down the exact lifestyle of Archaeopteryx. It's undetermined if Archaeopteryx spent more time flying around or hanging out down on the ground. I personally like to view it as kind of adjacent to our modern-day roadrunner, especially since we know that it lived in arid environments, ate mostly bugs and small vertebrates, and had flat feet. Now, returning to our broad world of theropods, it's important to note that not all of them were living the same lifestyle. We can actually see that reflected in our modern birds today. Let's take a look at a raptor like the red-tailed hawk. Loving to eat little bits of meat, it's actually very reminiscent of everyone's favorite theropod, Tyrannosaurus rex. We also note that many songbirds, like the common house sparrow, love to eat things like seeds and bits of vegetation, which is not all dissimilar from many dinosaurs in the family of Therenzanasauria. Okay, now that we're a little bit into this video, I do have to be really candid with you and tell you that I genuinely know nothing about dinosaurs. First of all, this laptop filled with bit by bit ways to pronounce all of these long dinosaur names. And even then, I guarantee you I'm messing things up, so please be nice to me in the comments. Second of all, truly, when I say I know nothing about dinosaurs, I mean from the bottom of my heart, I know nothing about dinosaurs. So when I had heard about, the mass extinction event of, giant meteor, are you familiar with it? I figured that due to the name mass extinction, everybody and everything died. did you know that that's not actually what happened? Because during this research, color me shocked to find out that not everyone died. What? Now, due to the ash and decay after the meteor landed, ash, decay, to put it scientifically, of course, all of the plants started to die out, okay? Plants died. And then herbivores that like to eat the plants died. And then carnivores that like to eat the herbivores, you guessed it, died. You want to know who didn't die? Our little bird friends. This subgroup of theropods, called Neornithes, was able to survive. They had a much more flexible diet, which meant that they could find and eat seeds, insects, and detritus, or dead things, which there was a lot of. Their small size also meant that they could very easily move and adapt to different and changing environments. Neornithes also had beaks instead of teeth, meaning that they were able to break open nuts and seeds that other animals weren't able to do, so that way they were able to get that protein inside. Now, also during this research, I got very curious because birds, as you may or may not have noticed, don't have teeth. They're rocking with beaks only. So I looked into why this is the case, and fun fact, okay, during a dinosaur's incubation process, up to 60% of the time incubating in the egg was meant just for creating teeth. Over half of the time they were in an egg was just to make teeth. So yeah, if we get rid of the teeth and replace it with a beak-like structure, we're saving time in the egg, which means our reproduction rates are going up. It's looking good out here for the birds. So that's how we got our modern birds in the wake of extinction. But I am not just here to talk birdie to you. Let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of evolution, specifically convergent and divergent evolution. Now, evolution is based on the needs of an individual or a species as a whole. As animals migrate into different areas, they must either adapt to fit that area or create their own niche. So, that begs the question, how did pigeons adapt and evolve, and why? Okay, I'm trying really hard to not look at my laptop too much for my notes during this, but if I don't, this is going to be really bad, so bear with me for a second, okay? There were 4 main divergences in evolution from the Cretaceous period into the Cenozoic. So let's go over those 4. Number 1 is... Oh my god, I feel like that girl from Glee right now. Okay. So, the first group is Paleognathy, which is composed of ostriches, emus, and their general group of relatives. Then we have Anseriformes, which is ducks, geese, swans, screamers, a personal favorite, and their relatives. Galliformes are pheasants, grouse, quail, turkeys, and their relatives. And then there's the Neoaves, which is quite literally everybody else, aka the vast majority of our modern birds. Now, since this is such a wide collection of birds, it gets pretty messy. It gets real complicated, both on a large scale and even as we go further in. Biologists and researchers just cannot agree on every single thing, clearly, so there are probably going to be some discrepancies mentioned. If you are a biologist and you're watching this, again, be nice. I'm not an expert. I just really like pigeons. Thank you. Now, for the purposes of this little project, we're going to follow this lineup that I got from Wikipedia. Ooh. Okay, what do you know? There's a pigeon right next to Columbomorphae. Right there. Let's take a closer look. Within that, we do have the Columbia taxon and the Columbomorphae clade. Genome analyses have found that Columbiformes is the sister clade to pteroclimicytes, which is a clade consisting of sand grouses and mesites. Mesites? Eucytes. Who knows? As of right now, there is no confirmed evidence of pigeons in the fossil record, which is most likely due to their incredibly fragile bones. For a while, it was believed that one had been discovered in the early Miocene epoch in France, around 23 million years ago. However, this was later determined to be a kind of sand grouse. Sand grouse and pigeons are generally pretty similar, most likely due to convergent evolution. For those that need a refresher, convergent evolution is the process in which two different species end up evolving the same or very similar traits, likely due to the need arising in those individual lifestyles for that trait. The best example of this is going to be dolphins and bats, both utilizing sonar. Now, it's no secret that sand grouse and pigeons look very similar. Their plump bodies, muted grayish-brown appearances, and softer, more rounded beak shape kind of make them look like cousins. Other than some stripy differences in feather appearance, there are a few other ways to tell them apart. First of all, sand grouse males have actually developed something called water feathers. They're actually able to store a lot of liquid up in the feathers around their chest and then transport that from location A to location B. Further, sand grouse do not coo as the pigeons do. Moreover, sand grouse nests are much, how do I put this, prettier than that of a pigeon, and their babies are precocial, meaning that they come out with a little bit of feathers and are also prettier than the babies of a pigeon. No offense to my pigeons. Now, within the group of Columbiformes, there are only 2 families, but it's still known as being one of the most diverse non-passerine Neoavian groups. Now, this order is made of the Columbidae family and the Rhaphidae family. Columbidae is, of course, made of our beautiful pigeons and doves, while the Rhaphidae family is made of dodos and solitaires. Yes, it is time for me to talk about everybody's favorite big, fat, prehistoric bird, the dodo. Now, many people thought that dodos were actually more closely related to ostriches due to their flightless nature. But this is actually because on the island of Mauritius, which is where they are found, or were found, they actually had no natural predators, so they never developed a need for flight. Now, you are hearing me talk in the past tense. Does anyone want to take a wild guess as to why dodos are extinct? Anyone? I'll give you a hint. It was not natural causes. Oh, do I hear an answer in the back? Yes, humans. Is anyone surprised? Because I'm not. Dodos became extinct in the mid to late 17th century when Dutch sailors came and destroyed their habitat, killed them for sport and for meat, and also released plenty of invasive predators onto the island of Mauritius, including pigs, cats, rats that all carried and spread diseases, as well as just ate and attacked the dodo birds and their eggs and babies. Now, while this is obviously incredibly disappointing, I will say that the island of Mauritius itself is absolutely beautiful and full of amazing people that are doing a lot for conservation. The saving of the Mauritius kestrel, the protection of the pink pigeon, which yes, don't worry, we will be taking a look at later, and the introduction of the Aldabra tortoises in a large 20-hectare nature preserve make this island a beautiful and very diverse ecosystem. So here we are. We have separated pigeons from their dodo great-grandfathers and their sand grouse cousins, and we have determined that they are dinosaurs. But where does that leave us for right now, right in this moment? Let's look at where they are now. And let's ask ourselves the question, what makes a pigeon a pigeon? Well, first, a pigeon is a dove. A pigeon is called a rock dove. That is their name. I know that we oftentimes think of doves and pigeons as being two wildly separate things because we think of doves as being these white, small, delicate, pristine, holier-than-thou images of peace. And we see pigeons as urban, city-dwelling, dirty, unintelligent disease carriers. And there is definitely a message about humanity hidden in there somewhere, but we do not have the time in the video to talk about that. Maybe another time. But I cannot stress this enough. Pigeons are doves. Don't get it twisted. Specifically, these guys that you have probably been imagining in your head the whole time when I say pigeons are, again, rock doves. They got their name from their joy in sitting on rocky ledges. Some like to say that all pigeons are doves, but not all doves are pigeons. You can take whatever you want from that. Now, pigeons and doves can come in so many different and beautiful colors and sizes, and just, we get so many amazing variations. I love pigeons. I don't know if I've mentioned that. I love pigeons. So we are going to go ahead and talk about just some of my favorite variations that we can find all over the world. So again, I know that you are thinking, what? They're just little gray and white birds. Wrong. Wrong. Now, I know that earlier I mentioned the pink pigeon from the island of Mauritius, and it would be wrong of me to not show you what they look like. We do also have the metallic pigeon, the scaly naped pigeon, the pink-necked green pigeon, one of my favorites, and the Nicobar pigeon. And then we also have some true doves. Some of my favorites are the bleeding heart dove, the wampu fruit dove, and of course, the mourning dove, which I love so much I have a tattoo of. #1 mourning dove lover. But I know that we haven't really answered the question, what makes a pigeon a pigeon? So we are going to go ahead and break it down, wicka wicka, in... Jesus Christ. We are going to go ahead and separate that into just a few categories. We're going to be looking at anatomy and physiology, habitat and distribution, feeding, and reproduction. Let's get into it. Pigeons are known for having short legs and small heads on large, compact bodies, a short bill with a fleshy cere, which is that little bit right on top of their nose or their beak, and no gallbladders. They also have relatively large wings and very strong wing muscles, having 11 primary feathers. Their body feathers have very dense and fluffy bases, which is generally pretty loosely attached to the skin, which means if they are in a predator's mouth for hopefully a brief moment, they're actually able to kind of release a bunch of their feathers all at once, distracting the predator and hopefully meaning that they can escape. The granivorous species have generally dull coloration, so again, what we typically think of whenever we think of pigeon, but frugivorous species are usually quite vivid and colorful. Some species may be sexually dichromatic, while other species may have crests or other fun ornamentation. Now, their large wings do mean that these birds are excellent flyers, but very few species are migratory in any sense of the word. The largest current species is the crowned species of New Guinea, though the largest ever species of the columbiformes was, of course, the dodo. May they rest in peace. Now, the smallest current species are the common ground dove and the dwarf fruit dove. So cute. Now let's talk about range and distribution. Pigeons are found almost everywhere on Earth. In fact, you can find them pretty much everywhere except Antarctica and the absolute driest areas of the Sahara Desert. Columban species may be arboreal, terrestrial, or semi-terrestrial. They may inhabit savanna, grassland, shrubland, desert, temperate woodland and forests, tropical rainforests, mangrove forests, and even the barren sands and gravels of atolls. Now, some individual species have tiny distributions, taking up one small island or even a small section of a small island or country, just like the Somali pigeon. Now, some species, of course, have a very, very wide range, just like the rock dove or the common pigeon, which we see absolutely everywhere, most commonly in large cities. Now, the rock dove or the common pigeon had a very large distribution naturally, from Britain and Ireland to northern Africa, all across Europe to Arabia, Central Asia, India, the Himalayas, and up into China and Mongolia. Upon domestication, these birds found themselves in even more places around the world. Funnily enough, a research study done in 2020 showed that the United States has 2 pigeon genetic megacities, one in New York and one in Boston. The researchers also showed that these groups did not ever voluntarily choose to interact, despite both being on the East Coast. Reminds me of some hockey players I know. And that's all I'll say on that. Now, pigeons and doves are generally either granivorous or frugivorous, though many will eat both, as well as some other nice tasty little snacks. Granivorous species eat, of course, seeds on the ground, so they have evolved to have very thick walls in their intestines, gizzards, and esophagi. Frugivorous species eat arboreal fruits, which are typically much softer, so they've actually adapted to have much thinner intestinal walls. Also pretty cool, they can actually hang all the way upside down to eat their fruits. Like I said, not every single pigeon and dove falls into this frugivorous or granivorous category. We actually see that quail doves and ground doves actually really like to eat insects and worms. The atoll fruit dove is specialized in taking in reptile and insect prey. White ground pigeons, orange fruit doves, and ruddy ground doves may eat moths, snails, and other insects. The urban rock doves that we know depend on humans for food. We oftentimes will see them scavenging for spilled food or asking humans for food outright. Reproduction! Most pigeon species lay a clutch or a group of 1 to 2 eggs at a time, and these eggs can take anywhere between 11 and around 30 days to hatch. Pigeons have also developed a reputation for their abstract-looking nests, which are usually just comprised of maybe a couple sticks, some trash and debris, generally whatever they can find. However, what is pretty sweet is that both the mother and father of the eggs work together to make these nests. Not just working together to make the nest, both parents will actually work together to take care of the babies. I'm gonna go ahead and shout out my Animal Crossing fans once again. When you hear pigeon milk, what do you think that is? Perhaps a better term for it is crop milk, which is produced by both males and females. Though our barista friend Brewster in Animal Crossing seems to just bring it out behind the bar, maybe from a fridge, this is definitely not where your average pigeon is able to store it. Now, the lining of the parent bird's crop, which is the expandable muscular structure which is designed to temporarily hold and store food, right kind of at the base of the neck right here, actually begins lining itself with very fatty lipid-filled cells. These cells then detach, mixing with the liquid that's already in the crop, thus forming our milk. The parent then regurgitates the milk and then feeds it to the baby mouth to mouth. Now, don't let me convince you to say no whenever Brewster asks you if you want a little bit of pigeon milk in your coffee. This pigeon milk, which is actually more similar in texture to cottage cheese, is actually very, very good for babies. It acts as a vital high-energy food source and immune booster for growing chicks. Now, this crop milk is not just found in pigeons either. It's also found in some penguin species and flamingos, though with flamingos, it's actually more of a reddish pink color due to their diet. All right, now that I'm sure I've really piqued your appetite, let's go ahead and review and wrap up. The vast majority of theropods, or dinosaurs that walked on 2 feet, were wiped out with the mass extinction event of the meteor. However, some survived. Their adaptability was really heightened with their beaks rather than teeth, their small size, and their ability to communicate and work in groups. These theropods then diverged into 4 groups, including the Neoaves. From there, we have the clade of Columbomorphae and then the Columbiform family. Pigeons and doves as a whole have found their niches all across the globe, with pigeons being so sweet and irresistible that we domesticated them and brought them truly everywhere with us, including right here in the United States, where I am actually watching pigeons outside my windows right now. Now, though this was a generally pretty brief, kind of jumbled skimming of the surface of pigeons and doves' evolutionary history, it is really important to note that their domestication history is much more complex with a lot more bumps along the road. From at one point being worshipped as godlike figures to later inspiring Charles Darwin to really learn and understand evolution as we know it and talk about it today, these birds do not deserve the rats with wings title that we have bestowed upon them. I would love to dive into all of that, the crazy world of racing pigeons and breeding fancy pigeons, and truly talk about just how intelligent and important these birds have been to the history of the world in another video. In case I have not made it clear enough somehow, pigeons have truly bobbed their heads all the way into my heart, and I can only hope that this video has helped you learn a little bit more about pigeons and really appreciate just how lucky we are to be living among these cute, tiny little dinosaurs today. I am no expert, but I am definitely an enthusiast about pigeons, about birds, about animals and life in general, and I truly love to learn and I love to share what I learn. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, feel free to like, feel free to comment, please feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. But hey, in the meantime, stay cool. See ya. Therinzinosauria. 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 Therinzinosauria.